Jayden didn't think, he reacted. The gunshot cracked through the dark hallway, and he grabbed Eve's wrist, yanking her behind the marble pillar just as another bullet shattered the glass vase beside them. Eve gasped, her breath trembling against his shoulder. Jayden's pulse hammered, not from fear of the gunman stalking the shadows, but from the terrifying realization that someone had broken into his home on the very first night of their forced marriage. And they were aiming directly at her. "Stay behind me," he whispered, voice low, controlled, but tight with an urgency Eve had never heard from him before. I am," she whispered back, gripping his shirt. Her fingers shook so violently he could feel it through the fabric. Footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. The intruder wasn't rushing. He was hunting. Jayden peeked from behind the pillar. A masked man scanned the room with a gun fitted with a suppressor. This wasn't a random break-in. This was planned. Another bullet hissed past Jayden's ear and embedded in the wall behind him. Eve flinched and muffled a cry. Jayden pulled her even tighter behind the pillar. "Don't make a sound," he breathed, feeling her trembling all over. Seconds stretched, tense enough to strangle the air. The intruder stopped moving. Silence filled the room, dangerous silence. The kind that meant he was listening. Jayden moved only his eyes, scanning for a weapon. His phone had fallen somewhere in the hallway. His security system had been jammed. His guards had been drugged at the gate. This wasn't small. When the footsteps resumed, further away this time, Jayden saw a tiny window, a chance. He grabbed Eve's hand again. "We need to move." Quietly. She nodded, swallowing hard. He guided her across the polished floor, keeping her close, shielding her body with his. They slipped into another hallway, just as the masked man spun around and fired again. Jayden shoved Eve through a doorway and slammed it shut behind them. The bullet hit the door with a heavy thud. Eve pressed her back against the wall, chest rising and falling too fast. Jayden braced an arm beside her head, listening for footsteps outside. The gunman didn't follow. Not yet. Eve whispered, "Why is someone shooting at us?" Why me?" Jayden didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know. And that terrified him more than the bullets. Sirens began to wail outside. Reinforcements. Backup. The gunman must have heard it too, because the footsteps retreated rapidly, then silence swallowed the mansion. Jayden exhaled, finally letting the tension loosen just enough to speak. "You're safe now," he told her. Eve shook her head, her voice cracking. No, I'm not. That man didn't even look at you. He was shooting at me." "At me, Jayden." "Why?" Jayden had no answer, so he defaulted to the one thing he knew, to control. "Come," he said, taking her hand firmly. "We're going upstairs until security clears the property." "But..." "I said come." She followed, because she didn't know what else to do, her legs still weak from fear. Hours later, after the police searched the mansion and the intruder vanished without a trace, Jayden stood by the bedroom window while Eve sat curled on the edge of the bed. She looked small. Fragile. But the trembling in her eyes wasn't only fear, it was confusion. Hurt. Anger. Jayden rubbed the tension from his neck. "Why were they here for you?" he muttered to himself. "I don't know." Eve burst out, voice raw. "I don't know anything. First I'm forced to marry you, now someone is trying to kill me, what do you want me to say?" Jayden turned to her, jaw tightening. "You must know something." Her eyes flashed with indignation. "I don't." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've never done anything to anyone," she shouted, rising to her feet. "I had a simple life, Jayden. I wasn't important. I wasn't worth killing. My father. Her voice broke. Jayden exhaled sharply and walked toward her. "Your father died protecting my family." "He died mysteriously," she corrected, tears filling her eyes. "And now this. You think it's a coincidence?" Jayden froze. He hadn't considered that angle. But Eve wasn't done. "My father wrote something before he died," she whispered, voice shaking. "Something I didn't understand." Jayden's brows pulled together. "What did he write?" Eve hesitated. I'll show you. But not tonight. I can't. Jayden nodded, running a hand through his hair. Fine. Tomorrow. She looked away from him, wiping her tears. Why are you being nice to me all of a sudden? She whispered. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He couldn't tell her the truth, that her innocence the night before had shaken him, made him realize he'd misjudged her. That the softness in her eyes had stuck with him all day. That the thought of her getting shot a few hours earlier had made his chest ache in a way he didn't want to admit. So he gave her the safer answer. The colder one. Because you're my responsibility, he said. Eve's heart tightened. She looked down, nodding weakly. Right. Of course. Just responsibility. Jayden didn't correct her. He walked to the door. Get some sleep. But as he stepped out, Eve whispered, I didn't ask for any of this. Jayden stopped, but didn't turn around. Neither did I. That night, neither of them slept. The next morning, Eve woke up early, her mind still reeling. She found the notebook she'd mentioned last night, old, worn, barely held together. Her father's handwriting filled the pages in frantic strokes. She slipped it into her purse and found Jayden already downstairs, phone pressed to his ear. He wore a sharp black suit, hair perfectly in place, face back to its usual arrogant calm. But Eve noticed something different. He kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. When he ended the call, he said, We need to talk. I know, Eve murmured, clutching the notebook. Jayden gestured for her to follow him. Instead of his office, he led her to a smaller lounge, less formal, more private. She stood awkwardly while he remained standing opposite her. The tension was thick. You said you had something to show me, he said. Eve opened her purse and took out the notebook. She held it like it was a piece of her father she wasn't ready to lose. This was in his things, she whispered. I found it the week after he died. Jayden reached for it, but she pulled back slightly. Careful, she said. It's all I have left of him. Jayden softened a little. I will. She handed it over. Jayden opened it. His eyes quickly moved across the pages. These are surveillance notes, he said slowly. Dates. Times. Locations. And these names. Eve nodded. I don't know who they are. Jayden pointed at one name. This one. Marcus Kane. That's my uncle's business partner. Eve's eyes widened. Your uncle. The same uncle who would inherit everything if you didn't marry me. Jayden stiffened. Yes. Eve's voice dropped to a whisper. Jayden, what if my father didn't die by accident? What if he found something? The air thickened. Jayden flipped through the pages faster, his expression darkening with every line. This is bigger than I thought. A cold chill ran down Eve's spine. What are you thinking? That last night he worked, Jayden said slowly, my father told me he suspected someone in the company was sabotaging us. And you didn't think to tell me this yesterday? Eve asked, incredulous. Jayden snapped the notebook shut. Because I didn't think it involved you. But it does, she cried. It clearly does, Jayden. He ran a hand down his face. I need time to process this. Eve shook her head, flustered. We don't have time. That man tried to kill me last night. Before Jayden could respond, one of his security officers rushed into the lounge. Sir. We found something near the fence. Jayden straightened sharply. What? A message. For your wife. Eve's blood turned to ice. For me. Jayden didn't wait. He marched out of the lounge, Eve and the guard close behind. Outside, taped to the metal fence, was a small piece of paper. Eve's name was written on it. Her hand shook as she took it. Jayden watched her, tension radiating off him. She unfolded the note. Her breath hitched. Jayden grabbed it from her hands before she could collapse. His eyes narrowed as he read the message aloud. You should have died with your father. Eve sucked in a sharp breath. Her knees buckled. Jayden caught her before she fell. Her voice broke. Someone really wants me dead. Jayden's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. "No one is touching you," he said fiercely. "Not while I'm here." Eve looked at him, terrified. "Why is this happening? What did my father do? What did he know?" Jayden stared at the note, anger burning behind his eyes. "Whatever it was," he said, voice low and lethal, "we're going to find out." The day spiraled from tense to explosive. Every minute revealed more questions than answers. Jayden locked down the mansion. Security tripled. Calls poured in from executives, lawyers, distant relatives, everyone pretending concern but really asking the same thing: why had someone targeted Jayden's new wife? Eve stayed in the study, her hands clenched tightly as she tried not to cry. She didn't want to appear weak. Not in front of the men who already saw her as beneath him. But when Jayden entered the room an hour later, she stood immediately. "Did you find anything?" "No," his voice was rough. "But I will." She nodded, tightening her fingers. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. Jayden looked at her, really looked at her. And something in his expression shifted. He walked closer, stopping just inches away. "You're not alone in this," he said. Eve searched his face. "Am I just your responsibility?" Jayden opened his mouth to answer, but an unexpected hesitation softened his eyes. "No," he murmured finally. Her breath caught. But before she could decipher what that meant, Jayden stepped back. "There's something I have to tell you." She braced herself. "What?" "When I agreed to this marriage," he said quietly, "I thought you were just part of the deal. I didn't think you mattered." Her face fell, but she stayed still. "But last night," he continued, "when that man aimed at you, it did something to me. I can't explain it." Eve's lips parted. "Jayden. I'm not saying I'm suddenly a saint," he cut in. "But I'm not letting anyone touch you. Ever." Eve swallowed hard. "Thank you." He nodded once. "Rest for now. Tonight, we go through the rest of your father's notebook. Together." She breathed out slowly. "Okay." As Jayden walked away, Eve's heart ached with confusion. He was rude, arrogant, controlling, yet strangely protective. And that protectiveness made her chest feel too tight. Jayden didn't know how to explain the shift inside him. He didn't understand it himself. But he knew one thing for certain: Eve Daniels was no longer just the bodyguard's daughter. She was the key to a secret that could destroy everything. And someone out there would kill her before letting that secret surface. As the day darkened into night, Jayden stood by the window, watching the guards patrol the property. He felt Eve's presence behind him before she spoke. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. He turned, meeting her nervous eyes. "I should be asking you that," he said. They sat together on the couch, the notebook spread between them. Page after page revealed more troubling information, patterns Eve hadn't noticed. Jayden traced a line with his finger. "This symbol, my father used it to mark high-risk threats." Eve gasped quietly. Her father had circled that same symbol around two names, Jayden's uncle and Marcus Kane. "My father died because of them," she whispered, voice cracking. "Didn't he?" Jayden closed his eyes, jaw tight. "It's starting to look like it." Eve wiped a tear. "Then what happens now?" Jayden turned to her, eyes burning with determination and something else, something warmer, something that made her heart stumble. "Now," he said, "we protect each other." Eve nodded slowly, her breath trembling. "Okay." Jayden held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. And neither of them pulled away. Their forced marriage was no longer just an arrangement. It was becoming a battle. And they would have to survive it together. The following morning, Eve awoke with a tightness in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was fear, exhaustion, or the strange warmth that had settled inside her after last night's conversation with Jayden. She hadn't expected him to sit beside her for hours, analyzing her father's notes with surprising patience. She hadn't expected him to speak so softly either, or to look at her with something that looked suspiciously like worry. She pushed the blanket aside and stepped out of bed. When she reached the hallway, one of Jayden's guards approached her. "Mrs. Carson," he greeted, slightly bowing. "Mr. Carson asked that you join him in the West Lounge when you wake." Eve blinked. "Oh, okay." The guard motioned the way, but Eve shook her head. I know where it is. Thank you. She walked down the hallway alone, her heartbeat quickening with every step. Last night's events were still replaying in her head, the gunman, the note, Jayden catching her when her knees buckled, his voice when he'd said, "No one is touching you. Not while I'm here." She still didn't understand him. When she pushed open the lounge door, Jayden stood by the window again, this time wearing a navy suit that fit him perfectly, hair slightly tousled in a way that looked intentional even if it wasn't. He turned when he heard her enter. "You're awake," he said. "Yes." He motioned for her to sit. She took a seat on the couch, hugging her elbows instinctively. Jayden walked toward her, holding a tablet in his hand. "I made some calls after you slept." Eve's stomach tightened. "What did you find?" Jayden sat across from her, his expression darker than she'd seen in days. "I think your father was investigating something that put him directly in my uncle's path." Eve's breath hitched. "Then my father's death, it wasn't an accident." Jayden didn't sugarcoat it. "No. I don't think it was." A trembling breath left her, her eyes filling with tears. She pressed her hands to her mouth, trying not to break. Jayden watched her quietly, then leaned forward, his voice low. "Eve. I'm sorry." She shook her head. Don't say that. You don't know what it feels like to lose someone and not understand why." Jayden's jaw flexed. "Actually, I do." Eve lifted her eyes. Jayden exhaled slowly. "When my father died, I didn't understand it. One minute he was fine, the next, he was gone. They called it a heart attack, but sometimes I still think." He stopped talking, the unfinished sentence hanging like a ghost between them. Eve's anger softened into something sadder. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You weren't supposed to," Jayden said, leaning back. "But I'm telling you now so you understand, your father's death matters. And I'm not letting it get buried." Eve swallowed hard, brushing her tears away. "Thank you." Jayden nodded once, then tapped the tablet. "There's something else." Eve braced herself. "What now?" "Your father wasn't just tracking names." Jayden handed her the tablet. "He was tracking money. Transfers. Hidden accounts." Eve blinked. "He was." "Yes. And one of those accounts belongs to my uncle." Eve's eyes widened. "The same uncle who would have inherited everything if you didn't marry me?" Jayden nodded. "Exactly." The room thickened with tension. Eve whispered, "Jayden, your uncle tried to kill my father." His nostrils flared. "I know. And now he wants to kill me too." Jayden looked away for a moment, his jaw clenched hard. When he turned back, his voice was low and deadly calm. "He's not getting to you." Eve hugged herself, shivering. "But why? Why would he want me dead?" "Because," Jayden said quietly, "your father must have left something behind. Something your uncle fears you'll find." Eve pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. "Oh God." Jayden stood and paced once, then faced her again. "I need to take you somewhere safe." Eve stiffened. "I'm not leaving." He frowned. "Eve. I'm not running," she said firmly. "Not again. I ran from the truth after my father died because I was scared. I'm done running." Jayden stared at her. Really stared. As if he'd never seen her before. Then he murmured, "You're braver than I thought." Eve shrugged, trying not to tremble. "Fear doesn't stop danger. It just makes you feel smaller." His expression softened. "Eve." She stood and took a slow breath. "If my father died protecting something, I want to know what it was. I need to." Jayden moved closer. "I won't let anything happen to you." Eve's eyes flickered to his. "I know," she whispered. "But we're not safe here, are we?" He sighed, tilting his head slightly. "Not as long as my uncle is out there." A guard knocked on the door, interrupting them. "Sir, your uncle is requesting a meeting." Eve's breath caught. "What?" Jayden's eyes hardened like steel. "Of course he is. He's panicking. Will you meet him?" Eve whispered. Jayden looked her dead in the eye. Not without you. Eve froze. Me. You're my wife, he said simply. And he needs to see that I'm not afraid. Eve swallowed, fear climbing her spine. Okay, if you think it's safe. I don't, Jayden answered honestly. But I won't let him touch you. Half an hour later, Eve found herself sitting beside Jayden in the back of his armored SUV, her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. Jayden's hand rested casually on the seat between them, but every now and then, their fingers brushed. Each touch made her heart skip. She didn't understand this man. Not at all. He was cold yet warm. Detached yet protective. Arrogant yet gentle in strange, unexpected ways. When they arrived at the upscale restaurant, Jayden stepped out first, then held a hand out for her. She hesitated only a split second before placing her hand in his. He closed his fingers firmly around hers as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Inside, Jayden's uncle, Richard Carson, was already seated. Tall, slim, elegant suit, eyes sharp like a businessman accustomed to winning. When his gaze shifted to Eve, the fake smile faltered for a split second. That tiny flicker was enough to send a chill through her. Jayden, Richard greeted with a calm voice that felt too smooth. Nephew. Anne, the lovely new bride. Eve forced a polite smile. Jayden didn't bother smiling. Let's get this over with, Jayden said, pulling out Eve's chair before sitting beside her. Richard's eyes flicked between them. You've changed, Jayden. Marriage seems to have rearranged your priorities. Marriage tends to do that, Jayden said flatly. Richard poured himself a drink. I hear there was an incident at your home. Jayden didn't blink. News travels fast. Richard swirled his glass. A shame, really. This city isn't as safe as it used to be. Eve's nails dug into her palm under the table. Jayden leaned forward. Cut the act. Richard raised a brow. Act. We both know you're involved, Jayden said coldly. Richard chuckled. Oh Jayden, always jumping to conclusions. Jayden's expression didn't budge. Stay away from my wife. Richard's eyes sharpened instantly. Is that a threat? No, Jayden said. It's a promise. Eve's heart thumped loudly. Richard leaned back, inspecting her with unsettling interest. Tell me, Eve, how are you adjusting to life with my nephew? Eve swallowed hard. Fine. Only fine. Richard smirked. He can be difficult. Jayden tensed. She's not here for your entertainment. Richard lifted a hand. Relax, Jayden. I'm merely trying to understand why the daughter of a servant suddenly finds herself at the center of so much chaos. Eve's breath hitched. Jayden's voice dropped into a dark growl. Don't you dare call her that. Richard's eyes flickered with amusement. Protective, aren't we? Try me, Jayden warned. Eve placed a gentle hand on Jayden's arm, whispering, Jayden, please. She didn't want a public scene. He looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, and forced himself to calm down. Richard watched the exchange with interest. Fascinating, he murmured. I wasn't expecting this. Jayden's jaw clenched. What do you want? A simple chat, Richard said. You know, to ensure there are no misunderstandings. Jayden narrowed his eyes. What misunderstandings? Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice. Your recent marriage, for instance. Quite rushed. Quite inconvenient for our shareholders. And then this attack. You must understand, Jayden, some people are beginning to question your judgment. Jayden's nostrils flared. Are you one of them? Richard smiled thinly. I'm always concerned about the company's future. Eve felt as though the air was getting thinner. She barely blinked when Richard's gaze turned back to her. You must have been very close to your father, he said softly. Eve stiffened. Jayden's hand moved under the table until his fingers brushed hers. She knew what he was silently saying, don't react. Richard continued, such a loyal man. Always taking notes, always paying attention. It's such a shame when a man like that dies without getting the chance to share what he's learned. Eve's heart dropped. Jayden sat up straighter. Every muscle in his body tensed. Richard smiled coldly. What a tragedy. Jayden stood abruptly. We're done here. Before Richard could reply, Jayden pulled Eve to her feet and guided her out of the restaurant. Once outside, Eve finally allowed herself to breathe. Jayden, she whispered shakily, he knows. I know, Jayden said, his expression grim. He practically admitted it. He's going to try again, she said, voice trembling. Yes, Jayden replied, taking her hand tightly. But he'll have to get through me first. Inside the car, Eve's fingers twisted nervously. Jayden, what do we do now? He squeezed her hand. We find out exactly what your father discovered. And we use it. She looked at him. And if it puts us in danger? He met her eyes, his voice low and fierce. Then we fight. Eve swallowed. I'm not strong like you. You're stronger, he corrected. You survived losing your father. You survived me. A faint smirk tugged at his lips. Most people would have run by now. Despite her fear, a small laugh escaped her. Maybe I should have. Too late, he murmured, leaning closer without meaning to. You're stuck with me. Eve froze, not because of fear but because her chest fluttered in a frightening, confusing way. Neither of them looked away. The car suddenly jerked as it pulled into the mansion's driveway. Jayden blinked and sat back, clearing his throat. Eve exhaled shakily. Her heart needed a moment to catch up. When they stepped out of the car, Jayden took her hand again, no hesitation this time, and led her into the house. As soon as the door shut behind them, the head of security rushed forward. Sir. We received new intel. Jayden turned, tension returning. What is it? We found another message. It was placed on your vehicle while you were inside the restaurant. Eve paled. Another one. Jayden grabbed the envelope from the guard and tore it open. The note was simple. You're next. Eve gasped and covered her mouth. Her legs trembled. Jayden slammed the note onto the counter, rage burning in his eyes. That's it. We're going to the police. I'm done playing games with him. Eve grabbed his arm. Jayden, wait. What if the police are involved? What if your uncle has people everywhere? Jayden froze. Eve continued softly, my father didn't trust anyone. If we involve the police without proof, we could make it worse. Jayden exhaled sharply, torn between anger and reason. Then what do we do? Eve lifted her chin, surprising even herself. We find the missing piece. Whatever my father died protecting. That's our leverage. Jayden stared at her, admiration flickering in his gaze. You're not afraid anymore. I'm terrified, Eve said honestly. But I'm tired of running. Jayden nodded slowly. Then we face this together. Eve's lips parted. Together. Yes, he said firmly. Together. Before Eve could respond, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Both she and Jayden snapped their heads toward the staircase. Jayden immediately stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. Jayden. Eve, now. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it made her freeze. Another crash echoed. Something, or someone, was inside the mansion again. Jayden motioned to the guards. Split up. Check every corner. No one gets past you. He pulled Eve close, his arm wrapping protectively around her. She clutched his jacket, shaking. Jayden, she whispered, what if it's him? His voice was a low growl of determination. Then he came to the wrong house. As the guards rushed upstairs, Jayden slowly backed Eve into the safer part of the hall. Her heart hammered as footsteps thundered overhead. Shouts and movement followed. Seconds later, a guard shouted, Sir. We found something. Jayden pulled Eve forward quickly. When they reached the bedroom hallway, the guard pointed toward the door Eve had slept behind last night. Sir, this was left on her pillow. Eve's mouth went dry. Jayden stepped into the room first, scanning it. Eve followed slowly. A single knife lay on her pillow. A red ribbon tied around the handle. A message carved into the blade. You can't hide her. Eve staggered backward, hitting the wall. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth to keep from screaming. Jayden picked up the knife, his hand shaking with fury. This ends now. Eve shook her head, tears spilling. He was in my room. Jayden, he was in my room. Jayden dropped the knife and took her face in his hands. Look at me. Look at me, Eve. She forced her panicked eyes to his. I'm here, he whispered, his forehead pressing lightly against hers. I'm here. He didn't touch you. He didn't take you. You're safe. Her breath hitched as she squeezed her eyes shut. Jayden, I can't. Yes, you can, he whispered. I won't let anything happen to you. She gripped his shirt desperately, trembling. You're safe, he whispered again. For a long moment, they stayed like that, his hands cupping her cheeks, her fingers tangled in his shirt, their breathing shallow and uneven. Finally, Eve whispered, what do we do now? Jayden opened his eyes and pulled back just enough to look into hers. We fight back. Jayden didn't wait for the smoke to clear. He dragged Eve deeper into the bushes, ignoring the sting in his leg as he covered her with his body. The echo of gunfire rang through the night, each shot a brutal reminder of how close death hovered. Eve's hands trembled against his chest, and he could feel her shallow breaths warming the collar of his shirt. She was terrified, but she didn't scream. Not even once. Stay down, he whispered, tightening his grip on her as if he could pull her into his ribcage for safety. The forest fell eerily silent after the final shot. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just the suffocating pause that follows violence. Eve slowly lifted her head. Jayden, your leg. I'm fine. He wasn't. Blood seeped through his pants, warm and sticky. But that didn't matter. We have to move before they sweep the area. He pulled her to her feet, keeping his hand locked in hers. They half ran, half limped through the trees until they reached a small clearing. Only then did he force him to stop. Sit, she demanded, her voice shaking. Please. He hesitated. Eve, we don't have time. Sit. Let me help you. You saved my life. He sank onto a fallen log. Eve ripped part of her dress, wrapped it around his thigh, and tied it tight enough to make him hiss. Her fingers were gentle, but her eyes were fierce. You could have died, she whispered. And leave you alone with people trying to kill you. Not happening. Her lips parted, her expression softening. She looked at him as if she were seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the arrogant heir, not the man she was forced to marry, but someone who would bleed for her. Why are they after me, Jayden? She finally asked. I don't know yet, he admitted. But your father knew something worth killing for. And now they think I know it too. Yes. She looked down at her blood-stained hands. This started because of your family. No, he said firmly. This started because of my uncle. Eve swallowed. Then let's end it. He stared at her. Eve, that means confronting him. He won't hesitate to kill either of us. I'm tired of running. Something inside him cracked at those words, her quiet courage, her resolve. He reached up and cupped her cheek. I'm not losing you. Not now. Not ever. Her breath trembled, but she didn't pull away. Their eyes locked, a silent promise passing between them. Normally, Jayden pulled back before moments like this got too intimate, too real. But this time, he didn't. He leaned in, brushing his forehead against hers. We finish this together, he whispered. She nodded. They left the forest, found a hidden path that led toward the abandoned district at the edge of the city. The place Jayden suspected his uncle used as a safe house. The place Eve's father had circled in his notebook. As they approached the old warehouse, Eve squeezed his hand. You sure this is it? Yes, he said quietly. This is where everything ends. Inside, the air smelled like dust and gasoline. Jayden pulled Eve behind a crate as footsteps echoed above them. His uncle's voice drifted through the air. You idiots lost them in the forest. How incompetent can you be? Jayden felt Eve's hand tighten around his. A guard replied, they're probably dead. The shots were direct. If they were dead, his uncle snapped, I wouldn't feel uneasy. Jayden motioned to Eve. Stay behind me. She shook her head stubbornly. We go together. He exhaled, she wasn't the terrified girl he married. She was becoming someone he couldn't help but admire. He stepped out from behind the crates. Looking for me, uncle? The entire room froze. His uncle turned slowly, shock flickering across his face before curdling into a smirk. Jayden. I thought you'd be smarter than this. Guards raised guns instantly, surrounding them. Eve stepped out beside Jayden, her shoulders squared, chin lifted. His uncle chuckled. Ah. The daughter of the loyal dog. You look just like him when he begged for your life. Eve's breath hitched, but she didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She stared straight ahead, her voice steady when she spoke. You killed him. I had to, the uncle replied casually. He found out I was moving assets to offshore accounts. He threatened to expose everything. His death was necessary. Jayden's jaw tightened. So you killed the men who protected me my whole life. And now you want to kill his daughter. His uncle shrugged. Loose ends. Jayden stepped forward, ignoring the guns pointed at him. You're not touching her. You still don't get it, his uncle said softly. You were never meant to inherit anything. You were only useful as long as I needed a puppet. But now you're a nuisance. And nuisances get eliminated. Jayden opened his mouth to respond, but Eve stepped forward first. You're wrong, she said. My father left something behind. Something he knew would destroy you. His uncle stiffened. What? Jayden pulled the notebook from his jacket. The tiny ledger Eve's father had kept. The book that held records, evidence, names. The book that could put his uncle behind bars for life. His uncle's face finally cracked. You don't know what you're holding. Eve's voice was cold. It's enough. His uncle snarled and snapped his fingers. Kill them. Gunfire erupted. Jayden shoved Eve behind a crate as bullets tore through the air. The guards moved fast, but Jayden moved faster. He tackled one, grabbing his gun and firing back. Eve crawled behind another crate, heart racing, hand shaking, but then she saw something on the ground. A discarded metal rod. She grabbed it. A guard approached her, raising his gun. Eve stood, adrenaline surging, and slammed the rod against his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. She swung again, hitting him in the face, and he dropped unconscious. Eve. Jayden shouted. I'm fine. More guards stormed forward. Jayden fired until the gun clicked empty. He grabbed Eve's hand and pulled her behind a pillar, both of them breathing hard. We're outnumbered, Jayden said. We can still win, Jayden. Look at me. He did. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crumbling. She was fighting. His chest tightened with pride, and something deeper. We do this together, she said. He nodded. They moved as one. Eve distracted two guards by throwing a metal pipe while Jayden tackled another. She hit one across the knee, Jayden knocked out the other with a punch. They fought like they had trained for it, like they were made for it. Finally, the gunfire stopped. Only his uncle remained. His uncle clapped slowly. Impressive. Your father would have been proud. Eve's throat tightened, anger surging. You don't get to say his name. Her uncle scoffed. You think you've won? That little notebook won't hold in court. Jayden smirked. Maybe not. But the backup will. What backup? The drive your men failed to find, Eve said. My father hid it somewhere you would never think to look. His uncle's eyes widened. You're bluffing. Eve stepped forward. Try me. His uncle lunged for a gun on the floor, but Jayden got there first. He kicked the gun away and pinned his uncle to the ground with a swift knee to the spine. You lose, Jayden said. Police sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Jayden's security team burst into the warehouse moments later, guns drawn. Take him, Jayden ordered, pointing at his uncle. The uncle struggled as they dragged him away. This isn't over, Jayden. You think you're strong now? You're nothing without my influence. Nothing. Jayden didn't respond. He simply turned away, grabbed Eve's hand, and pulled her close. The moment they stepped outside, the night air hit them like a blessing. Eve exhaled shakily, leaning into him, her forehead against his chest. It's over, she whispered. Jayden wrapped his arms around her. Because of you. No, she said, looking up at him. Because of us. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I almost lost you. But you didn't. I came close, he whispered. Too close. Her lips parted, her breath mingling with his. Jayden. He leaned down, voice raw. I love you. Her breath caught. You, what? I love you, he repeated, firmer this time. I didn't know it at first, but I know it now. I almost lost you tonight, and it nearly destroyed me. Tears gathered in her eyes. I love you too. He kissed her, not urgently, but deeply, with everything he had been holding back since the moment he realized she was more than a duty. Her hands cupped his face, his fingers tangled in her hair, and for the first time since their marriage, they weren't pretending. They weren't forced. They were two people whose lives had collided violently, only to find something worth protecting. When they finally pulled apart, Jayden rested his forehead against hers. Let's go home. Weeks passed. The trial was brutal, but Eve's father's notebook, and the hidden drive they recovered, crushed Jayden's uncle completely. The company board removed him immediately. Jayden inherited full control, the inheritance clause fully honored. And Eve became more than the bodyguard's daughter, she became Jayden's partner, his equal, his anchor. One evening, Jayden found her standing on the balcony of their home, staring at the sunset. Thinking about something, he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. Thinking about my father, she said softly. About how he always wanted me to be safe. To be loved. Jayden hugged her tighter. He'd be proud of you. She leaned back against him. And of you. I hope so, he whispered into her hair. They stood quietly, letting the orange glow wash over them. It wasn't the chaotic beginning they had been forced into. It wasn't the fear or the secrecy. It was peace. Hard-earned, fragile, beautiful peace. Jayden turned her around gently. Eve. Yes. He took her hands. Our marriage started for the wrong reasons. But everything after, everything we survived, made it right. I don't ever want a life without you. You're not beneath me. You never were. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Eve's eyes softened. I choose you, Jayden. Not because I have to. But because I want to. He kissed her again, slow, sure, full of promise. Their story had begun in shadows, but it grew into something unbreakable. And neither of them would ever forget the men who brought them together, Eve's father, the man who gave his life for honor, loyalty, and the daughter who became the heartbeat of Jayden's world. If you enjoyed this movie-style story and want more gripping tales like The Bodyguard's Daughter, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.